Susano is a melee, physical damage dealing, pure strength scaling god in SMITE 2. He focuses on extremely high mobility and the ability to chase down targets not necessarily better, but more quickly than other junglers. And speaking of which, Susano is currently just a jungler. Although, if you want to have some fun, he can work in the ADC role if you're attempting to do a kill lane and end the game quickly. So in turn, Susano is all about power and burst, and since he focuses on auto attack cancelling, Hydra's alignment is 100% necessary to maximize your damage, and as such, there's no reason to go Boomba's spear here, just a hammer will do. Generally speaking, I don't value cooldown rate on Susano all that highly since he's such an all-in character, either you burst someone down and get out at 1 HP or you don't. Relics wise, despite not having any built-in CC immunity, Blink really is the only way to go. It's your one-way ticket to getting the first blood kill you'll need to get the ball rolling, and not get behind, because man, Susano is awful from behind. Let's start understanding what makes Susano such a glass cannon by talking about his passive. Every time Susano uses an ability, he will gain a charge of his passive. Susano can apply this charge of his passive to an enemy by basic attacking them. And no, using 2 abilities and then basic attacking will not apply 2 charges. As I mentioned earlier here, auto attack cancels are the name of the game here. Enemies will be affected depending on how many charges they have on them, and the charges last for 4 seconds and this timer of course refreshes when another charge is applied. At 1 and 2 charges, the enemies will have 10% reduced power, making it harder for them to fight against Susano. At 3 and 4 charges, the enemy will be slowed, which is massive given how many ways Susano can already close gaps. And finally, at 5 and 6 charges, enemies will take 10% extra damage from all sources, finally making it easy to finish off enemies. Now this passive doesn't do all that much, to be honest. This passive is mostly just there to encourage you to play Susano correctly, that is to say, utilizing auto attack cancels whenever you can. But 6 stacks? How are you supposed to do that? Does Susano have 6 abilities? Well, no. That's where Susano's first ability comes in. This is a unique 3-part ability. The first part of the ability slashes directly in front of Susano in a cone. Now this cone may look relatively big, but keep in mind that it's quite small and takes time to come out. So when quote unquote aiming it, make sure you're looking directly at your target so the cast time doesn't mess with your aim. Then, you have 3 seconds to cast the second part of this ability, a circle AoE around Susano. And then once again, you'll have another 3 seconds to cast the next part of this ability. This part is a very fast dash that goes through all enemies and damages them. The dash is, when isolated, very fast, but always remember what you have to do to get it. That is to say, the first 2 parts of your one first before you can dash. So in short, remember that when you're about to all-in somebody, they and all enemies around you know that if things go wrong, and this dash is all you have left to get out of a bad situation, they just have to CC you for 3 seconds, or at least close to 3 seconds, to make this dash completely irrelevant. And finally, the cooldown of this ability will be reduced depending on how many sections of it you used. But this is pretty irrelevant. You should be using your dash to get around the jungle. Getting that extra 1 second cooldown off, it doesn't help. But let's get to the real sauce of this ability, the auto attack cancels. All you need to do to perform them is hold down the basic attack button. That is it. Auto, ability button, auto, ability button, auto. You need to do this, period, end of story. Your first ability does the most damage in your kit, barring your ultimate, and it doesn't do enough damage, frankly. You need to do these auto attack cancels to kill people. And if you're stumped on how to do this, just hold down the basic attack button, that's it. The only timing is reactivating your one after the auto attack comes out, that's all. So just pace yourself and don't try and rush it at first. Then of course comes the dash, which, as you can guess, is usually what you use to get out of fights. But never forget that it too can grant a passive charge on your opponents, so when the coast is clear and you know you're safe, use this dash wisely to not only deal a small amount of damage, but get an extra passive charge in there too. The dash is fast and goes through your target though, so how are you supposed to catch back up to your target or even start the fight in the first place? That's where Susano's second ability comes into play. Susano deals damage in a cone area in front of himself and pulls enemies who are in the center. Now to be clear, this ability counts as a knockup. I know it pulls people, but yeah, it's a knockup. This is why you might see weird interactions such as when you pull someone who's in your ally whirlpool from a Poseidon and then they just get knocked up in place. But I digress. This is a very basic ability to get your combo started, and it of course works well with Blink. Blink 2 and then pull them into the blender. But remember, this is SMITE 2 now, so what you can do once you get used to the timing is 2 and blink while it's casting to make it harder to react to. But obviously, if anyone sees Susano blink on them, they're going to assume you're going to use this ability to get the combo started. But don't forget, it does damage too. Don't forget just to use it for raw damage when clearing camps or waves, or just to deal damage to someone even if you can't pull them, like in that Poseidon example I made earlier. Don't forget that it goes through walls too though. This is super niche, I know, but when chasing, you can use the 2 over wall to knock up opponents and slow their escape down. Then, you usually chase with your third ability. Susano fires a projectile which will stop on walls and enemies. If it directly contacts an enemy, it will attach itself to that enemy. However, it will not prioritize gods, so minions will body block it. When the projectile stops, it will spawn a rain cloud that will deal damage over time. And then, within 3 seconds, Susano can reactivate this ability to teleport to the rain cloud. So now, Susano probably makes more sense. 2, then 3, and don't teleport right away, and start whacking them with your 1. Then, if they use a movement ability to get away from you, use your teleport. And if they outlast the teleport timer, use your dash instead to chase them. And obviously, if they don't have a movement ability in their kit, just destroy them. Doing this simple 3 auto 3 auto combo is very important as well, so make sure to practice that timing too. This mind game has plagued Smite players for all of Susano's lifespan. Will he or won't he teleport? Play around with Susano's teleport a lot to see how different players react to getting the rain cloud stuck on them and act accordingly. If they dash away every time they get touched, don't even bother teleporting right away for damage or even using your 1. Just bait out their dash and teleport after them. If they don't mind waiting out your teleport, make sure to space out the usages of your 1 so that you'll have the dash in reserve for longer than they expected. Play around with it and make sure you don't do the same thing every time. Being predictable is the worst possible thing you can do as a jungler. Now we tie things up with Susano's ultimate. Susano summons a tornado which lightly pulls enemies in and deals damage over time. At any time, or after 2 seconds, Susano can reactivate this ability to unleash the tornado forward. The tornado will deal burst damage this time and knock up any enemies it hits. And naturally, the size of the tornado and the burst damage it deals will increase depending on how long you charge it up. So remember, that means the ult will go further if you charge it for longer, and if you're trying to of course finish someone off at a long distance, you want the widest, most damaging, and longest reaching version of the ult in order to do it. But of course, the ultimate has that insane benefit of the hefty damage over time as well with that slight vortex. So generally speaking, you do want to plant it on someone and just whack them senseless in most situations. And remember, Susano has 3 ways to do that. You can either use your 2 other abilities, and then when you're certain you can kill, dash in with your 1 and ult, 3 in and ult, or 2 in and ult. But of course, when you know they're slippery, that is to say, they have a dash and or they're blink, just save your ultimate to finish them off instead. Susano really is just about reading your opponents, not much else about the character is difficult. But speaking of your 2 and your ult, one very important mini combo is knocking up enemies with your ultimate and then 2ing your opponent. This is an absolutely mega amount of CC, and given that your ult is so massive and you control when you release it, you can easily pull 2 or 3 enemies in all sorts of shenanigans late game. Into a Zeus or Poseidon ult, into an Athena taunt, into a Medusa ultimate, and so on. Speaking of combos, let's get to them. Blink 2, auto 3 auto, 1 auto 1, auto 3 auto, and then dash. At a distance 3 3 2, auto 1 auto ult, auto, and then use the dash and reactivate the ult when needed. Ult 2 3 auto 1, and use your teleport and dash as needed. Ult at a distance, blink, reactivate ult, 2, auto 1, and chase with your dash and 3. For ability leveling, you want your 3 at level 1. This is because of something I forgot to mention. The cooldown on your 3 will be reduced if you teleport to the 3 while it's attached to an enemy. So in the early game, this is easily Susano's lowest cooldown ability, so you want it for early clear. And then you usually get your 2 at level 2 so you can fight better. However, if you know you won't be fighting at level 2, get your first ability at level 2 so you can farm better instead. Then at level 3, just level whatever's left. Then get your 1 at level 4. Then get your ult at level 5, but then skip leveling it until your 1 and 3 are complete, focusing on leveling the 1. Then prioritize the ult over the 2. This is definitely kind of finicky, and if you don't want to bother not leveling the ultimate, I get it, it's not that important. So that's Susano. If you're struggling with him right now, don't worry, he's in desperate need of buffs. However, he is insanely good in the early game for getting kills. So if you trust your teammates to play the late game well, or if you just want to try and get the enemy team to surrender at 10 minutes, Susano is a great option. Remember though, you don't have access to beads in SMITE 2 as Susano, so do not pick him into things like Ares or Anubis, or especially Thor, where you just pray you won't get hard CC'd, because you will die. Remember, your 1 takes time to cast, and your 3 is only medium speed and can be body blocked. Susano is mobile, but it's situational. Don't forget small things too, like ulting to simply give yourself time to get your 1 and your 3 out as well. Sometimes just using everything to survive is mandatory. But really your goal with Susano should be, kill as much as you can early game, and play back in the late game on a flank to pick the perfect time to all-in somebody with one of your insane combos. That's all I have on Susano for now, thanks for watching.